Let us examine one by one the sentences written in the literature that have existed so far, on the interpretation of several inscriptions related to studies, academic studies to clarify the historical record of Borobudur. In literature data, what has been available so far for the translation of the caloric inscription are. The inscription mentions the construction of a sacred Buddhist building to house the Manjusri statue, which contains the wisdom of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the same trinity as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. Is it true that such interpretation, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the same trinity as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara? Whether the three components of the word above can be interpreted or support the concept of Trinity. Let's examine it for our clarification. Written interpretations that have existed like this. The construction of this sacred building was ordered by King Indra, honored in his official name Sri Sangramadhananjaya. This reference to Hindu deities in Buddhist temples signifies Tantrayana, Vajrayana influence of Buddhism. Let's examine it for our clarification. The temple dedicated to Manjusri is identified as Candi Siwu, which is located not far north from the Prambanan Prasasti temple and is displayed at the National Museum of Indonesia, Jakarta, with inventory number D.44. Manjusri. We observe the word, Manjusri. To understand the meaning of the word we start with the same or identical word. Many meanings with the word in general and popular so far. Later we will trace the philosophy that underlies the word. Then our general basic understanding will relate to the word used in ancient inscriptions or sacred buildings in Java, and later we will understand the use of the word Manjusri on the caloric inscription. Manjusri. The word, Manjusri, we find in some literature among some Indian philosophies in general on the main teachings of Manjusri, namely yoga, samadhi or tapa. It is necessary to note that these three words are very familiar words in the local dialect of the archipelago. Here we must be careful because this philosophy exists in both Hinduism and Buddhism. We will try to slowly observe every philosophy. Underpinning his also years of development of the respective religious philosophies that underlie Hinduism and Buddhism. Yoga. Yoga is one of the main philosophies in India, which consists of Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisesika Mimamsa Advaita. Literature information about yoga is in the Yoga Sutras, Yajnavalkya Yoga, Samkhya, Pravakanabhasya. Concept-derived yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Prior to this, note this information, which explains the ritual or procession of tapa in almost every early philosophy in India. We pay attention to this in Buddhism, clearly called the word yoga. The concept comes from the Samadhi philosophy, while in Hinduism it is in the Sannyasa Palsafa. Philosophical view. Ajivaka. Early Buddhism. Karwaka. Jainism. Hindu Orthodox philosophy, non-Sramani. In the Buddhist version, in naming the statue or Akka, Manjusri dynasty Pala, India, 9th century AD. Manjusri is a bodhisattva associated with prajna in Mahayana Buddhism. In Tibetan Buddhism, he is also a yidam. In Sanskrit, Manjusri is also known by the full name of Manjusri Kumarabuddha. The literal meaning of the word, Manjusri, still young, or, less literally, Pangaran Manjusri. In Mahayana Buddhism, scholars have identified Manjusri as the oldest and most significant bodhisattva in Mahayana literature. The first Manjusri is mentioned at the beginning of the Mahayana Sutras like the Prajnaparamita Sutra, and through this association very early in tradition it came to symbolize the embodiment of prajna, transcendent wisdom. Vajrayana Buddhism. In Vajrayana Buddhism, Manjusri is a deity in the ritual application of meditation, and is considered a fully enlightened Buddha. In Shingon Buddhism, he is one of the three Buddhas. He is a figure in many esoteric texts such as Manjusri Mula Kalpa and Manjusri Namasam Jati. His wife in some traditions is Saraswati. Manjusri Mula Kalpa, which was later classified in Kriyatantra, states that mantras are taught in Seva. The Garuda and Vaisnava Tantras seem to be more effective metaphors applied by Buddhists, as they were all originally based in the views of Manjushri. An example of Manjusri's wisdom teachings can be found in the Saptasadika Prajnaparamita Sutra, Taisho Tripitaka. This sutra contains a dialogue between Manjusri and Buddha in Samadhi, SKT. Ekavyuha Samadhi. Sheng Yen adopted Manjusri teachings, to enter samadhi naturally through transcendent wisdom. The conclusion from Manjusri in the explanation above is that the philosophy that underlies the tapa ritual exists in almost every philosophical view in India as well as in Hinduism. The philosophy of Manjusri is identical to the ritual of the tapa procession in Indonesian. The tapa procession in Buddhist terms is Yoga 1 of the book that describes it is samadhi, in a large group of Buddhist schools included in the Vajrayana school. Let us take a look at the table of the Buddhist years of development specifically for the Vajrayana Buddha and the area of its spread. We can see that the Mahayana Buddhist school developed from 700–1200 AD in mainland India, and the Buddhists who developed in Southeast Asia were Theravada Buddhists who were thought to have started from Sri Lanka from 250 BC 1200 AD, so Vajrayana Buddhism never entered to the archipelago. The Theravada faith was also embraced by the Thai Sukhothai ethnic kingdom around 1260. Theravada further strengthened during the Ayutthaya period, 14th to 18th centuries, becoming an integral part of Thai society. In mainland Southeast Asia, Theravada continued to spread to Laos and Cambodia in the 13th century. However, starting in the 14th century, in the coastal extremities and islands of Southeast Asia, the influence of Islam turned out to be stronger, expanding into Malaysia, Indonesia, and most islands to the south of the Philippines. From the above information regarding the spread of Buddha, we can conclude that both Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism in their spread, especially in the century before 1200 AD, never entered the archipelago Nusantara Indonesia, Theravada Buddhism, which in its spread reached Southeast Asia. In a description of the literature that is circulating about Manjusri in Indonesia are. In 8th century Java during the Medang Kingdom, Manjusri was a prominent deity revered by the Sailendra dynasty, adhering to Mahayana Buddhism. On the caloric inscription and Manjusrigra inscription it is mentioned about the construction of a large inscription named Vajrasana Manjusrigra, Vajra House of Manjusri, identified today as Siwu Kandi, which is located only 800 meters north of Prambanan. Siwu is the second largest Buddhist temple in central Java after Borobudur. This depiction of Manjusri in Sailendra is similar to those of the Nalanda-style Pala dynasty, Bahar. Fahian 4th century AD at Muaratakus, Sumatra, Indonesia before. Fahian records from the 4th century AD, located in Muaratakus, Kampar Svarnadvipa Nusantara, Indonesia, invalidating the claim of Borobudur, which is not based on Indian philosophy and was not built in the 8th century AD. Let's take a look. The book, Chinese monk Fahian's Journey in India and Ceylon, 399–414 AD, Korean translation of the Chinese text by James Legge. Following the river Po Nai is the river Panay, to the east 18 yojanas, we arrive at the great kingdom of Chen Po, Champa, is Champar, on its southern coast. Where the students used to live and move, walk, spinning, around the tope, stupa, also 4 teachers, archi, sitting in 4 corners. In this place the tower is Muaratakus, was founded and there are other priests. From here on to the east nearly 50 yojanas we arrived at the kingdom, Tamralipti. Is Rare Puri, Siyongkang, Katanka, it's at the mouth of the sea. There are 24 Sangharamas here, all of them have permanent priests, and the law of Dhamma is respected. Fa Hien remained here for 2 years, wrote copies of the holy books, sutras, and then went on a large merchant ship. According to the source, Shodganga, Lanka, is the name of the area mentioned in the Kavyamimamsa from the 10th century Rajasekara. Lanka is identified in the southernmost part of the Indian peninsula, as an island somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Hindia is the name of the former Nusantara. In the Ramayana, Kavyamimamsa Rajaikara and Balaramayana, the description of this island does not support its identification with Ceylon or Simhala. It is located on the west side of the peninsula outside Travancore, while Simhala or Ceylon are on its eastern side. The hypothetical place Lanka is a Sanskrit technical term used in ancient Indian sciences such as astronomy, mathematics and geometry. Lanka at the equator where the Ujjain meridian intersects, i.e. a place with 0 degrees longitude and 0 degrees latitude or 0 degrees latitude coordinate is the sun is at the equinox. Position is right above the object on Earth, resulting in the object having no shadow. Sri Lanka coordinates are 10.279.2 left pointing arrow right pointing arrow 82.35.5 map center 0.7 degrees 51 and 80 degrees 45. E, 7.85 degrees north 80.75 degrees east, Colombo City. 6 degrees 56.04 N, 79 degrees 50 minutes 34 seconds east, 6.93444 degrees north 79.84278 degrees east. In summary, the northern latitude of Sri Lanka is between 6 degrees 7 degrees, not equinox. Based in the results of measurements and research by J.W. Iserman. Assisted by Delprat in 1889.0 degrees 21 north latitude is the position of equinox. Astronomically, the Muara Takus Sumatra Indonesia site is located on a line which is meant without shadow. Not Sri Lanka today. So astronomically the Muara Takus site is located on the equator coordinate 0 degrees 21 N and 100 degrees 39 east longitude, 0.09 east longitude. This is where the area without shadow. In the south of the holy city half yojana, there is a rock cave, on a large hill to the southwest, which is now called Lengkuik, Cave 7 Series Kodo Panisan, possibly a location around the land of the Cape and land of Sabaliong 13 Kodo Kampar. Looking from a distance of more than 10 paces, there is a statue in its golden hue and its distinctive features in a clear and bright display gold plywood figurine. When the kings of the surrounding area had sent skilled artists to pick up copies, none of them were able to do so. Among the people who have come here in saying that, "1,000 students have taken vows graduation here all leaving their shadows here." Fahian meant, the students were in a location where there was no body shadow during the day right under the sun. This is where the Chinese pilgrim Fa Hien visited the University of the Center of Science and Learning Philosophy, Dharma, in the Muara Takus area, Kampar Central Sumatra here where the artifacts of a former learning center named Dharma Phala were found. The Nalanda University in Bihar, India was founded in 427 AD, is a branch of the development of Dharma or Dhamma, learning from its center in Svarnadvipa built after Fa Huan 337-422 AD. Manjusri is depicted as a young handsome man with his palms tattooed with flowers. His right hand is facing downwards with open palms while his left hand holds the Utpala, blue lotus. He also wore a necklace made of tiger canines. Let us take a closer look at the meaning of Manjusri in the archipelago. The word Manjusri is listed on the Manjusri inscription, caloric inscription and Manjusrigra inscription. But before that we will review the information in the above sentence which has been interpreted by the general public on words marked asterisk and in brackets named asterisk Vajrasana Manjusrigra, Vajra Manjusri's house. In a complete sentence like this, Manjusri was a prominent deity revered by the Sailendra dynasty, adhering to Mahayana Buddhism. In the caloric inscription, 782, and the Manjusrigra inscription, 792, it is mentioned about the construction of a large inscription named Vajrasana Manjusrigra, Vajra Manjusri's house, identified as Kandi Siwu. Vajrasana Manjusrigra. In the Sanskrit dictionary, Vajra, lightning. Sana, tree there. The full meaning of Vajrasana. It can be interpreted, the flash of tree lightning light that illuminates the tree, or a symbol of the power of light such as the height of the tree there, is not the same as Vajrayana, which is induced by one of the Buddhist views. If associated with Mahayana Buddha, because the words Mahayana and Vajrayana are two Buddhist philosophical views. Manjusrigra. In the Sanskrit dictionary, Gura Gra, peak berry, while for the separate word Sigra means immediately, for the word house in Sanskrit is Griya. House, prasada, temple, building, palace. Complete meaning of Vajrasana Manjusrigra would be more correct if interpreted not a house but a holy place and not written the word build, because it is on. The previous text on the Kalasan inscription for the name Sailendra has a description of the time, which has been running for 700 years. Before we know further about Manjusri, which we will examine from the Manjusri Parasasti and Manjusrigra inscription which is more detailed, The author recalls the discussion of this section, namely the discussion of the Caloric inscription. This reminder and explanation will support our understanding later in the discussion on Manjushri. The Caloric inscription is an inscription dated 704 Saka written in Sanskrit with the Pra-Nagari script, found near the temple barn in the village of Caloric located not far north from Prambanan Kandy, Central Java, Indonesia. The writings on the inscription were found in poor condition, with some parts that are unclear and illegible. As a result, historians can only translate the main information of the inscription. The inscription mentions the construction of a sacred Buddha building to house the Manjushri statue containing Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha wisdom, Trinity same as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. The construction of this sacred building was ordered by King Indra, revered in his official name Sri Sangramadhananjaya. A reference to the Hindu deities in the temple. This Buddha signifies the Tantrayana, Vajrayana influence of Buddhism. The temple dedicated to Manjushri is identified as Candi Siwu, which is located not far to the north of Prambanan Temple. Currently, the inscription is displayed at the National Museum of Indonesia, Jakarta, with inventory number No. D.44. In the above information that has been spread so far about the interpretation of the Caloric Prasasti, there are key words, including Manjushri, Vajrayana, Tantrayana, Sangha, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshvara, Buddha, Dharma. We will explain. 1. Manjushri complete review after completion of the description below. 2. Vajrayana. 3. Tantrayana. 4. Sangha. 5. Dharma. 6. Maheshvara. 7. Brahma. 8. Siwu Temple. The names mentioned above we will detail one by one. Is it true that these words support the claim that the Sailendra dynasty adheres to Mahayana Buddhism? 2. Vajrayana. Buddhists generally classify themselves as Theravada or Mahayana. This classification is also used by some experts and is one of the most common uses in English. Two main extant schools of Buddhism are generally accepted by scholars: Theravada, school of elders, and Mahayana, great vehicle. Vajrayana, a form of teaching associated with the Indian Siddha. Vajrayana can be considered a third school or just part of Mahayana. Theravada has a wide following in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. Mahayana, which includes the Pure Land, Zen, Nichiren, Shingon and Tiantai traditions, can be found throughout East Asia. Tibetan Buddhism. Preserving Vajrayana teachings from 8th century India is practiced in the regions around the Himalayas, Mongolia and Kalmykia. Theravada Buddha. The Theravada school is considered to have the oldest Buddhist philosophy that has survived to date, and for several centuries dominated Sri Lanka and the Southeast Asian region, parts of southwest China, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand, as well as parts of Vietnam. It is also popular in Singapore and Australia. All Mahayana scriptures were originally in Sanskrit and were known as the Tripitaka. Therefore, the term Sanskrit Buddhism is synonymous with Mahayana Buddhism. Sanskrit is the classical language and the oldest language spoken by the educated people of India. Apart from Mahayana Buddhist scriptures, we find many historical and religious records, or other local traditional philosophical texts written in Sanskrit. China is the country with the largest Buddhist population, around 244 million people or 18.2% of the total population. They are mostly followers of Mahayana Buddhism, making Mahayana the largest Buddhist sect compared to other traditions. Mahayana, also widely practiced in East Asia, is followed by more than half of the world's Buddhist population. Vajrayana, Sanskrit, literally meaning vehicle or vehicle diamond, is Tantra in the philosophy of Buddhism. According to the Vajrayana scriptures, the term Vajrayana refers to one of the three vehicles or paths to enlightenment, the other two being Sravakayana, also known as Hinayana, and Mahayana. Founded by Indian Mahasiddha, Vajrayana is one of the Buddhist views in Tantra literature. So the conclusion about the word Vajrayana which is written on the caloric inscription or other inscriptions is not correct if the term is considered as a support to show that the Sailendra written on the inscription adheres to Mahayana Buddhism. Because Vajrayana is part of Mahayana, and Mahayana Buddhism in Sailendra ruled not reaching the archipelago, in the above note Mahayana Buddhist teachings only developed in India before the 1200 AD century, Mahayana Buddhists who came to the archipelago came from China by Biksu it Xing, namely in the 7th to 8th century AD. In the sentences circulating so far, namely, the inscription mentions the construction of a sacred Buddha building for the Manjusri statue house containing the wisdom of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Trinity same as Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. It is not quite the word Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha which in Buddhist understanding are different from what is called the same doctrines of Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshvara. What is in the Hindu viewpoint? To find out, we will discuss one by one, first with a discussion of what it is, Tantrayana. The most basic wall in Borobudur. Not based in the book, Mahakarmavibhanga, if it looks like it is true. Means the teachings of our ancestors colored it. Panel number 138 reads. Kusala Dharmabhajana. Literacy word, Dharma Dhamma, is this teaching from India? Not. This is the philosophy of his ancestors from the Indonesian people, which colored India. Pay attention to Kusala, translated as healthy, peace and quiet. Bhajans, the Sanskrit word bhajana comes from the root bhaj, which means to share, take part, participate in. Dharma, in Sanskrit, Dhamma, in Pali is the norm, or universal law that governs human existence and is usually interpreted as law and truth. The word bhajana also implies attachment, devotion to, joy, reverence, love, faith, worship. Piety is a spiritual principle, religion of means of salvation, worship. Bhajans, in the form of chants and congregational ties, which give individuals the opportunity to share spiritual and liturgical experiences. The essence of the archipelago's original teachings is, doing good and right is based on a gentle sense of compassion. This is called Dharma. This is the philosophy of our ancestors who colored India. Take a look at this Kitab, Mahaprajnaparamita literature about Sariputra and his teacher Sanjaya, written by Nagarjuna in the Mahaprajnaparamita literature, treatise on the virtues of wisdom. Also in the Divyavadana, p. 394. Sarvalokasya ya prajastapayadva tathagatam, Sariputrasya prajaya kalam narhati sodasim, written. A Brahmin from Suvarnadvipa named Kin Fa Suvarnaksa, one of the 6 great non-Buddhist masters, Sanjaya. Sariputra he came from Suvarnadvipa, Kin Chio, he was born in the Brahmin family. At the age of 17, he mastered all to the scientist. Veda, Book of Discipline IV, Mahavagga, The Great Division, 38. Venerable Shariputra was so impressed by the attitude of the Honorable Asaji that he followed suit, asking him who his guide was and what his guide taught. All the Sankhara Dhamma are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from dukkha. It is the path to purity. Dhammapada. Verses 277 to 280 Anthology. Other thing. Chinese pilgrims who visited the advanced archipelago earlier to study not as missionaries. Fa Huan 337-422 ad. Sung Yun 518-521 ad. Haiyan Sang 602-664 ad. Wei Ning 664-667 ad. It Xing 671-695 ad. Fa Huan or Faxian lived in the years 337-422 ad. After passing all over the place, they arrived in a region called Mata Ulo. They followed the river Po Na. On its banks, left and right, there were 20 monasteries, containing 3,000 monks. Mata Ulo is Malayu. The Po Na River is the Panai River around the Muaratakas site. This area is found with the remains of Dhamma, learning artifacts, also recorded in the name of one of its tribes, Dhammo. Atisa Dipankara Srinana, 321-393 AD, according to Taranatha, he was a contemporary of King Bayapala and Nyapala, 360-400 AD. Became the head of the Odantapuri and Vikramasila monasteries, a key figure in the establishment of Buddhism in Tibet. King Pala, descendants of the Sayalendra Balaputredua dynasty from Sumatra, built Nalanda 427 AD for the sake of development of his education center in the archipelago Nusantara, Indonesia, namely, Dharma Pala. Dapantha Hyang is one of the names of figures carrying the philosophy, Dharma. After Sanjaya, Sariputta, Dharmakirti and Atisha Tibet etc. Left, Minanga Kanva, Kampar Svarnadvipa Indonesia. Muara Takus site, where once stood a learning center for the main basic philosophy of Dharma, Dhamma recorded in the word Domo, in the Ketachuan area of Saka, Soko, more details Soko, Pisoko, Limbago. The Dharma, Dhamma philosophy is still depicted in Borobudur and preserved perfectly in Bali. So all the sites as well as the original teachings in the archipelago Nusantara Indonesia are not based on one of the two Indian religions, but what is still depicted on the Borobudur site and recorded in the original teachings of the archipelago, is what underlies the growth of the three religions there. The seeds grow into shoots and the shoots are not seeds. 3. Tantrayana. John Woodruff 1865–1936, was the first Western scholar to seriously study Tantra, who wrote about Tantra under the pen name Arthur Avalon and is known as the founding father of Tantric studies. Unlike previous Western scholars, Woodruff advocated and practiced Tantra, researching and presenting it as an ethical and philosophical system according to the Vedas and Vedanta. Woodruff also practiced Tantra and, while trying to maintain scholastic objectivity, was also a student of Hindu Tantra, the Shiva Shakta tradition. Subsequent developments after Woodruff also noted that a number of scientists began to investigate the teachings of Tantra, including scientists in comparative religion and Indology such as Ajhananda Bharati, Mircea Eliade, Julius Evola, Carl Jung, Giuseppe Tucci and Heinrich Zimmer. According to Hugh Urban, Zimmer, Evola and Eliade see Tantra as the pinnacle of all Indian thought, the most radical form of spirituality and the heart of ancient Indian indigenous culture, consider it the ideal religion for the modern era. They see Tantra as the most transgressive and holy way. Ellen Goff states, the Jain method of worship was most likely influenced by the idea of Shaktism, and this is evidenced by the Tantric diagram of the Rishi Mandala in which Tirthankaras is depicted. The Tantric tradition in Jainism uses spoken mantras or mantras in ritual practice that is believed to increase merit and facilitate rebirth. Hindu and Buddhist Tantric traditions spread rapidly in India and Tibet, and from there to Southeast Asia, East Asia and Central Asia. They significantly influenced many other religious traditions such as Jainism, Sikhism, the Bon Tibetan tradition, Taoism, and the Japanese Shinto tradition. The appearance of the term Tantra in the contextual meaning of the word Tantra is found in the Indian texts of the Rigveda by 71.9. It is estimated by scholars to be in the period 1700–1100 BC, Loom, one of the series of philosophical views in India. The earliest definitions and expositions of Tantra came from ancient Panini texts, Patanjali and literature, a ritual-oriented language-focused Mimamsa understanding of Hindu philosophy. 5th century BC scholar Panini in his Sutra 1.4.54–55 of the Sanskrit grammar, explains Tantra through the example of Sva Tantra, Sanskrit, which he means, independent, or one who himself weaves cloths, weaves, promoter, Prakriti c. Appearance of the term Tantra in Indian texts. Period. Which in group by scientists. Text or author. Found in the book. The contextual meaning of Tantra. 1700–1100 BC. Rigveda by 71.9. Patanjali in his Mahabhashya quotes and accepts Panini's definition, then discusses or mentions it at a greater length, in 18 cases, which states that the metaphor definition is relevant to many contexts. The word Tantra, Patanjali states, means head, play. He used the same example of Svatantra as a compound word of Sva, self, and Tantra, then stated, Svatantra means an independent person, as whose master is himself, the main thing for who he is, interpreting the definition of Tantra. Patanjali also offers a semantic definition of Tantra, which states that it is a structural rule, standard procedure, centralized guide or knowledge in the field that applies to many elements. In Hinduism, the Tantra tradition is most often associated with a goddess tradition called Shaktism, followed by Shaivism and Vaishnavism. In Buddhism, the Vajrayana tradition is known for its broad tantric ideas and practices. Hindu and Buddhist traditions have influenced other religious traditions such as Jainism, Sikhism, Tibetan Bon tradition, Taoism, and Japanese Shinto traditions. In Hinduism, Tantric traditions are found in Shaivism's Shiva Siddhanta and Mantrapatha, Bhairava, and in this Shaktism, Vidyapitha and Kulamarga traditions. The Tantric text of the Vaishnava tradition is Pancharatra, and is usually called Agamas in the Shiva tradition. The term, Tantra, in the Hindu literary genre is usually used specifically to refer to Shakta Agamas. The Agamas literature is thick, and includes 28 Siva Agamas, 77 Shakta Agamas, also called Tantra, and 108 Vaishnava Agamas, also called Pancharatra Samhitas, and various Upa Agamas. Some of the Tantric texts in Hinduism are Vedic and others non-Vedic. Religious traditions include yoga and the concept of self-realization, some including Kundalini yoga, asceticism, and philosophies ranging from Dvaita, dualism, to Advaita, monism. The means of worship in Hindu Tantra practice differ from the Vedic form. While the Vedic yajna practices there are no idols and temples, in its Tantric tradition, idols and symbolic icons with puja are the means of worship. Symbolism in places of worship, icons reminiscent of devotees of attributes and values is an essential part of agamic practice, while the non-theistic path is not, one of the many alternative ways of Vedic practice. This, however, does not mean that the Tantra Agamas and the Vedas are against, according to medieval-era Hindu theologians. Tirumular. For example, explaining their link to, the Veda as the way, and the Agamas are the horse vehicle. The term Tantra was not one originally used by Buddhism, as scholar Isabel Onions explains in her dissertation, Buddhist Tantra Apologetics, or Antinomianism as Norm, D. Phil. Dissertation, Oxford, Trinity Term 2001 pg 8. Tantra Buddhism. Not a transcription of the original term, but a more modern, if not truly Western, view. The Sanskrit equivalent of Tantrika is found, but not in Buddhist texts. Tantrika is a term denoting someone who follows a sacred teaching known as Tantra, but only in Saivism, not Buddhism. Tantra Buddhism is the name for a phenomenon in Buddhism, in Sanskrit, Mantranaya, Vajrayana. The Mantrayana or Mantramahayana, and apparently no Tantrayana text appears. Its practitioners are known as mantrans, yogis, or sadhaka. So, we use the anglicized adjective, tantric, for Buddhism taught in Tantra is not an original tradition, but is a borrowed term that serves a purpose. The decline of the journey of Tantra in Theravada Buddhism began with the emergence of Buddhist modernism reforms in the 19th century, in particular the Dhammayattika Nikaya founded by King Rama IV, 1851-1868, of Thailand's Ratanakosin Raya in 1833, which was imported into Cambodia as a royal protectorate. In forming the Dhammayattika Nikaya, Rama IV emphasized the use of the Pali Canon as the primary authority for monastic practice and also sought to remove all elements of superstitious and folk religions. We look at the word text, Tantra, in Buddhist philosophy. The word is found in the Chinese Buddhist canon Tantra, Vajrayana, or Tantra Buddhism, volumes 18-21, c. 500-600 AD. And the word Tantra we find existed before Buddhism and Hinduism existed in India, namely in Rigveda X, 71-9 around 1700-1100 BC. Thus we can conclude that the word Tantra associated with the caloric inscription indicates that Sailendra does not adhere to Mahayana Buddhism or Hinduism. It should be noted that Hinduism in India is called Hinduism since the 19th century, under the dominance of Western colonialism and Indology, when the term Hinduism began to be widely used. Western scholars view Hinduism as a fusion or synthesis of various traditions and cultures in India, with diverse origins and no founding figure. Its roots include Brahmanism, ancient Vedic religion, religions of the Indus River Valley civilization, and popular local traditions. This synthesis arose around 500 to 200 BC, and grew alongside Buddhism until the 8th century. From North India, Hindu synthesis spread south to parts of Southeast Asia. Continue to Section 10. By Santo Saba.